a scientist known for demanding hard evidence before believing anything sat in that room the day the signal went out. And what happened next is still one of the most debated moments in the show's history. Do you trust a skeptic's reaction more than a believer's? And for everyone tuning in tonight, drop your city, age below. Let's see how far this one travels. There is a stretch of high desert in northeastern Utah that has been the subject of more theories, more speculation, and more unanswered questions than almost any piece of private land in the country. Long before television cameras ever arrived, before drones hovered over its fields, and before scientists set up sensor arrays across its perimeter, the people who lived near this land already knew to be careful around it. Stories passed between families for generations described lights that moved with no clear source, animals that behaved as though something unseen was watching them, and a general unease that settled over anyone who stayed too long after dark. By the time the ranch became a formal subject of scientific investigation, decades of first-hand accounts had already built a reputation that no single explanation could fully account for. When a team of researchers, engineers, and scientists eventually took up residence on the property to investigate it seriously, they didn't arrive expecting easy answers. They arrived expecting years of methodical work, cataloging sightings, setting up instruments, testing hypotheses, and slowly ruling out the mundane explanation, one at a time. For years, most of that investigation pointed upward. Cameras tracked lights in the night sky. Radar systems logged objects moving in ways that defied simple explanation. Drones captured footage of anomalies that no one on the team could immediately identify. The story of the ranch, as far as most viewers understood it, was a story about the sky. But somewhere in the middle of that investigation, the focus began to shift, started to suggest that whatever was happening above the property might not be the whole story, that the real source of the mystery, if there was one to find, might not be up in the air at all. It might be underneath their feet. That shift set the stage for one of the most talked about sequences in the show's history. The moment the team turned their attention to what lay beneath the mesa, and in doing so, stumbled into something that would connect the ground beneath them to the skies they'd been watching for years. Have you ever watched a skeptic change their mind in real time? And did it make you trust the moment more or less? It's a strange kind of proof, watching someone whose whole reputation is built on doubt suddenly run out of easy explanations. To really understand why this particular moment landed the way it did, it helps to step back and think about what makes this property different from almost anywhere else being studied this closely. Most places associated with unexplained phenomena rely almost entirely on anecdote, a single sighting here, a blurry photograph there. Stories that get passed around for years without anyone ever bringing in real instrumentation to test them. This location broke that pattern almost from the moment serious investigation began. Instead of relying on word of mouth, the team brought in radar systems capable of tracking objects with real precision. They installed camera arrays designed to run continuously, day and night, regardless of whether anyone was actively watching a live feed. They used magnetometers, spectrum analyzers, and a growing list of specialized sensors, all in an attempt to turn a place defined by rumor into a place defined by data. That distinction matters enormously when you get to a moment like the underground signal and its apparent response. This wasn't a single witness describing something they saw out of the corner of their eye. This was a documented sequence, a signal captured on recording equipment, broadcast broadcast deliberately through a known and verifiable channel, followed by a response picked up on the team's own instrumentation. Every step of that chain exists as data, not memory. And that's precisely what makes it so difficult to simply wave away. It's also worth remembering just how long this investigation had already been running by the time this sequence occurred. Years of prior seasons had already built a foundation of smaller, harder to explain moments, equipment behavior that lined up suspiciously with certain locations on the property, animal activity that shifted the moment researchers approached specific areas, aerial objects that appeared on radar and vanished before any camera could confirm what they were. None of those moments on their own were enough to draw a firm conclusion, but taken together, they built the kind of pattern that makes a team keep showing up season after season, convinced that if they just kept documenting carefully enough, they would eventually catch something undeniable. The underground cave system was, in many ways, the culmination of that years-long pattern. It represented the first serious possibility that the team wasn't just dealing with a collection of unrelated anomalies scattered across the surface of the property, but with something structural, something built into the land itself that might explain years of otherwise disconnected observation. Think about what that would mean if it turned out to be true. Every strange light, every unexplained reading, every moment of equipment trouble recorded over years of investigation suddenly wouldn't be a separate mystery. They would all trace back to a single shared source hidden beneath the mesa the entire time. That's the kind of possibility that can reshape an investigation overnight. And it's exactly the possibility the team found themselves confronting as they began mapping what lay beneath the surface. For years, the mesa at the center of the property had been treated as a landmark, a fixed point investigators used to orient their equipment, their cameras, and their theories. It loomed over the ranch, visually dominant, geologically unusual, and consistently associated with strange readings whenever instruments were placed near it. But its interior remained largely a mystery. No one had mapped what, if anything, existed beneath its surface. No one could say with confidence whether the mesa was simply solid rock or whether something more complex sat hidden inside it. That uncertainty became impossible to ignore once new evidence began pointing toward the existence of a massive underground cave system running beneath the mesa itself. For a team that had spent years chasing phenomena they could see, this was a different kind of challenge entirely. Caves don't announce themselves. They don't flash across the night sky or trigger a radar ping from miles away. If something significant really was hidden beneath the surface, finding it would require patience, specialized equipment, and a willingness to treat the ground itself as a place worth investigating just as seriously as the sky above it. The implications, if the cave system turned out to be real and extensive, were significant. It would mean that years of aerial anomalies, lights, objects, unexplained readings, might not be isolated events happening independently of one another. It could mean they were connected to something structural, something built into the land itself, something the team had been walking and driving over for years without fully understanding what was underneath them. It's the kind of realization that reframes an entire investigation. Imagine spending years staring at the sky, convinced that whatever you're looking for is somewhere above you, only to discover that the answer might have been beneath your boots the entire time. As the underground investigation intensified, the team made a decision that stood apart from almost everything they'd done before. Rather than simply recording storing and quietly analyzing a strange signal that had been captured on the property, they made the choice to do something far bolder. They took that signal and broadcast it out over the airwaves of a local radio station. Stop and consider how unusual that decision really is. In most investigations, scientific, paranormal, or otherwise, the instinct is to observe quietly, to avoid influencing the environment you're studying, to record data without interference. But this was different. This was the investigative team essentially asking a question out loud. Instead of waiting passively to see what might happen next, they took an unexplained signal recorded on their own land and sent it back out into the world, almost as if they were testing whether anything or anyone would respond. And according to the events documented in the episode, something did. The broadcast is described as eliciting a stunning response, a UAP event tied directly to the moment the signal went out over the airway. For years, the team at the ranch had dealt primarily in observation, watching, recording, waiting. This moment offered something rarer. It offered the suggestion of cause and effect. A signal went out, and something happened in response. Not proof, not certainty, but a pattern. And patterns are exactly the kind of evidence that keeps investigators awake at night, turning a single moment over and over in their minds, trying to figure out whether they just witnessed a coincidence or saw something far more significant. To understand why a moment like this carries so much weight, it helps to understand who was standing in that room when it happened. Dr. Travis Taylor has spent years on this investigation, serving as one of its most consistently skeptical, methodical voices. As an astrophysicist by training, his role on the team has never been to chase excitement for its own sake. It has been to interrogate the data, to look for the boring explanation before entertaining the extraordinary one, and to push back publicly and often against conclusions that outpace the evidence supporting them. Across seasons of investigation into aerial phenomena, unexplained readings, and anomalies tied to the ranch's geology, Taylor has built a reputation as the team member least likely to be swept up by spectacle, which is exactly why a moment like the underground signal and its apparent response matters so much in the context of the show. When a team member trained to demand rigorous evidence is confronted with a sequence of events that appears to show direct correlation, a broadcast signal followed by an immediate and unusual aerial response, it forces a reckoning that's harder to dismiss than a single unexplained sighting. It's the difference between spotting a strange light in the sky and asking a question than watching something answer. Consider, too, the sheer improbability of the timing involved. Investigations like this one generate enormous amounts of footage and data over the course of a single season, let alone across several years of filming. Most of it amounts to nothing conclusive. Long stretches of quiet, equipment checks, readings that fall within normal ranges, days where nothing unusual happens at all. That's the reality of serious field work, whether you're studying wildlife, weather patterns, or unexplained phenomena. The interesting moments are rare specifically because the boring moments vastly outnumber them. Against that backdrop, a sequence where a specific action, broadcasting a specific signal at a specific time through a specific channel, appears to be followed almost immediately by a specific and unusual reaction, stands out precisely because it breaks the pattern of randomness that defines most of the footage. It's the difference between noticing a strange light on a random Tuesday with no context and noticing a strange light immediately after doing something deliberate, designed to provoke a reaction. One is an observation. The other starts to look like an experiment with a result. That's not proof of anything supernatural. And to their credit, the team has never claimed that it is. But it is the kind of result that makes a group of trained researchers sit up a little straighter, double check their equipment, rewatch the footage more than once, and start asking harder questions than they were asking the day before. None of this means the mystery was solved. If anything, it did the opposite. It opened up an entirely new set of questions that the team would spend subsequent episodes trying to work through. There's a natural, technical explanation that has to be considered first, the way any rigorous investigation demands. Radio broadcasts can interact with atmospheric conditions, with electromagnetic interference, with equipment sensitivity in ways that aren't always obvious in the moment. It's entirely possible that what looked like a direct response to the broadcast was the byproduct of something far more explainable, a coincidence of timing, a piece of equipment reacting to conditions unrelated to the signal itself, or an environmental factor the team hadn't yet accounted for. Serious investigators don't get to skip this step, no matter how compelling the footage looks. Then there's the geological explanation, the idea that if the underground cave system beneath the Mesa really is as extensive as early evidence suggested, it might be tied directly to the aerial phenomena the team had already spent years documenting. Perhaps whatever is happening above the property isn't separate from what's happening below it. Perhaps the land itself, its mineral composition, its structure, whatever lies hidden in those underground spaces plays some role in generating or amplifying the anomalies the team keeps recording. If that's true, then the surface investigation and the underground investigation were never really two separate stories. They were always the same story, just being examined from two different directions. And then there's the explanation the show keeps circling back to season after season, the one that never fully goes away, no matter how many mundane possibilities get ruled out first. That whatever is happening on this property isn't random. That moments like this, a signal broadcast followed by an immediate and unusual response, aren't just interesting coincidences, but evidence of something responsive, something that noticed, something operating just outside the edges of what current instruments and current science can fully explain. It's worth pausing here because this is usually the point where a story like this either loses its audience or cements their attention for good. It would be easy to lean fully into that third explanation, to frame the signal and its response as undeniable proof of intelligence, of awareness, of something watching and choosing to answer back. That's the version of the story that spreads fastest, that gets clipped and shared, that keeps people talking around campfires and comment sections for years afterward. But that's not quite what happened here, and it's worth being honest about that. What actually happened is more restrained and in some ways more interesting. A team of serious researchers documented an unusual sequence of events, broadcast it publicly, and left the interpretation open. They didn't claim certainty. They didn't hand viewers a tidy conclusion. They simply showed what they recorded and let the audience sit with the same uncertainty they were sitting with themselves. That's rarer than it sounds in this kind of content. Most stories about strange signals and unexplained responses are eager to tell you exactly what to believe by the end. This one isn't. It leaves the door open in three directions at once. Technical explanation, geological connection, or something far stranger, and doesn't pretend to know which one is correct. Years into one of the most heavily scrutinized pieces of private land in the country, moments that suggest a clear cause and effect are rare. Most of what gets documented on this property falls into the category of isolated anomaly. A light here, an unexplained reading there, a strange sound with no clear source. Moments where an action produces an apparent reaction, where the team does something and the environment appears to respond, are far less common and far more difficult to explain away. A signal went out, something according to the events as documented, and years later, the team is still working through what exactly that means, still weighing the mundane explanations against the extraordinary one, still refusing to commit fully to either side. It's worth thinking about what it would actually take to move a moment like this from unexplained to explained in either direction. To fully debunk it, someone would need to demonstrate a clear, repeatable technical cause, a specific equipment fault, a specific atmospheric condition, something reproducible under controlled circumstances that accounts for both the signal and the timing of the response. To fully confirm it as something extraordinary, the team would need far more than a single event. They'd need repeatability. They'd need the same broadcast under the same conditions to produce the same kind of response more than once, ruling out coincidence through sheer weight of evidence. Neither of those things happened in a single episode, and that's exactly why the story didn't end there. It's why the investigation continued into subsequent seasons, why the team kept returning to the Mesa, kept refining their equipment, kept looking for ways to either strengthen or break the pattern they thought they'd seen. Good investigations rarely wrap up in a single dramatic moment. They accumulate slowly, one data point at a time, with occasional moments like this one that feel significant enough to reshape the direction of everything that follows. That refusal to settle is part of what keeps this story alive. If the team had simply declared victory, if they'd said definitively that they'd made contact with something unexplained, or conversely, that they'd fully debunked the entire sequence as equipment error, the story would have ended there. Instead, it remains open, unresolved, revisited in later seasons as new evidence and new context continue to shape how the team understands what happened that. So here's where we leave it, because a story like this deserves to end the way it actually ended, without a clean answer. If a signal recorded on your own property got a response like this, something immediate, something unexplained, something that looked for all the world like an answer to a question you didn't even know you were asked, would you want to know what was really behind it? Would you keep digging the way this team did, season after season, even knowing the answer might never fully arrive? Or would some part of you turn the radio off and leave the Mesa exactly as you found it?